Hey guys, Tony here from Off the Block Physical Therapy. So today we're going to talk about some things that runners can do to kind of self-assess and then to start to address some of the weaknesses or the instabilities that can cause some back pain in runners. So obviously the back being the most kind of central part of your body, there are so many things that can play a role and can ultimately lead you to having an excessive amount of strain or pressure placed on the lower part of the back when you're running, whether that be a weakness or a tightness somewhere farther up or down the chain or something else. And then ultimately there being some weakness here. And so all of that extra strain and tension ends up right here in your low back. So a couple of things I want to start out with first, kind of some self-assessment that really just turn into how you're going to address it. The first is I want you to take a look at your posture. So ideally when you're running, you want to have glutes engaged, core engaged, and your chest kind of in a more upright position, because that really just puts you in proper alignment where all of the muscles are at their optimal length so that they can perform coherently with each other. So to kind of self-assess, and then you're also going to utilize this if you find that this is difficult for you as an awareness technique or sort of an exercise. So I want you to stand up nice and tall. The first thing I want you to do is most people naturally have a tendency to let their hips roll forward. I want you to squeeze your butt cheeks like a ballerina would and engage that and tilt the pelvis back into a more neutral position. So you're squeezing here, you're gonna hold that. Once you get that squeeze, I want you to also kind of feel like your rib cage is like a bowl of water that you're trying to balance. And I want you to kind of lift and hold that nice and neutral. So we're not rounding here, we're not lifting here necessarily, we're just scooping into a neutral posture. So we're scooping into neutral here, scooping into neutral here. The last thing I want you to do is I want you to rotate your arms out like this. This is gonna pull your shoulder blades kind of down and back. So without extending here, just pulling those shoulder blades back where they belong. So tuck here, lift here, shoulders down and back here. This is the position you need to be running in, so you can swing your arms nice and easy from this position and everything moves with more stability. The biggest thing is when you do that at first, you're gonna feel like you're squeezing every little muscle in your body to make that happen. So you're gonna be giving everything 100%, you're gonna be squeezing real tight, lifting a whole lot, squeezing back, and you're like, I feel stiff, I can't do this. So the idea of the practice is the way you make it into an exercise is you're gonna do that. So say you're at work, sitting at your desk, you set a timer, once an hour or every 2 hours to get up, kind of reset everything. It'll be great for your posture at work. You're gonna squeeze here, lift here, squeeze here. And then what I want you to do is try to hold the position with less work. So kind of relax everything. You can still hold that position. So I'm not working anywhere near as hard now, maybe like 20-25%. And I'm still able to maintain that without focusing so hard and squeezing everything to death. So that's the exercise. Get into the position, get it nice and strong, and then relax and try to hold the position with much less effort. It's not gonna be like our typical exercise where you're gonna do like 3 sets of 10. Ideally, this is like a couple times a day just to bring more awareness to your body. And the more frequently you do it, the better your body will naturally get at it, and then you can literally just naturally engage that when you're running or just existing in your day-to-day life. So I know that one was a bit long, but that's the first thing that I want you to do to kind of self-assess and then treat if you find that you're having to work really hard to get into that position. The second thing that I want you to work on is your ability to do a squat. So everybody always talks about how runners have really weak glutes and so on and so forth, and most of the time they do. Their whole posterior chain tends to be a little weak because they're very hip flexor and quad dominant because they're going into this position all the time. But a lot of times it's not so much that they are weak, but more that their body doesn't naturally activate. So what better to do to activate the posterior chain than a standard squat? So I just want to talk you through a basic squat. Feet are going to be hip width apart, and you're going to sit back. So I don't necessarily want your knees coming way over your toes. They're going to kind of come out over your toes a little bit. And the biggest thing I don't want to happen is when you go down for a squat or when you come back up out of a squat, your knees don't need to go in. You need to be forcing them to go out. Not necessarily out, but at least neutral, if not with a little bit of outward pressure. So dropping into a squat, sitting back, and then coming back up. And then ideally you're also dropping those hips down below the knee level. So all the way down and all the way back up. Some of you may find that you don't have enough dorsiflexion to get into that position. So your heels try to come up off the ground. If you find that that's a problem, when you get down to the bottom of the squat, just sit there, sit back, try to get into those heels a little bit more, and then come back up. So it's really important for runners to have really good squat conditioning because it allows them to activate their posterior chain better when they run. They can be much more efficient and not just be using the front parts of their legs. The last thing I want to show you guys is hip flexion, both mobility and strength. So hip flexion is this motion, and runners are literally, like I said earlier, always in that motion. And some of them tend to have a lack of strength to pull that knee up and forward, or a lack of mobility that doesn't allow them to get there in the first place. So the way you're going to self-assess this is you're going to be standing in a nice position already. You're going to pull a knee up towards your chest, so you should be able to achieve higher than 90 degrees. So this is 90 degrees, higher than 90. And then what I want you to do is let go and see if you can maintain higher than 90. Don't want you to be bending your knee to get yourself up here. I want you to keep that bottom leg nice and straight. Hold for higher than 90. About 30 seconds ideally is how long you should be able to do that. And then try on the other side. Pull up. And you may have a side that you find is weaker or tighter than the other. So hold, get in that position. Try for 30 seconds. Keep that bottom knee nice and straight. So on and so forth. And then that turns right into an exercise. If you have trouble with that, lay down on your back, keep that one leg out straight, pull that knee up towards your chest, really start to stretch it out, and work on those holds. Because it's really important for runners to have that kind of conditioning so that ultimately they have both the mobility and the stability to maintain a nice healthy low back, and it doesn't have as much strain as it naturally would if all of those things weren't working correctly. So come back next week for a new blog post, and I hope you guys have a great one.